Karen thought she could just waltz into my backyard and destroy my prized fountain, the one I spent years restoring to its former glory. But she had no idea it was a registered landmark. Now, as the bulldozers rolled in to tear it down, I knew I had to act fast. This was war, and I was ready to go to any lengths to protect what was rightfully mine. I paced nervously in my living room, staring out the window at the commotion brewing in my backyard. Karen, that insufferable busybody from down the street, was standing there with a smug grin on her face, barking orders at the construction crew. My fists clenched as I watched them preparing to dismantle my beloved fountain, the centerpiece of my meticulously landscaped yard. This has to be some kind of mistake, I muttered under my breath, scrambling to find the documentation that proved the fountain's protected status. I'd fought hard to get it designated as a local landmark, and there was no way I was going to let Karen swoop in and destroy it on a whim. Just then, the doorbell rang. I flung the door open to find my neighbor, Bill, standing there with a grave expression. "Did you see what's happening in your backyard?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. "Yeah, that witch Karen is trying to have my fountain torn down," I spat. "But I'm not going to let that happen. I have the papers that show it's a registered landmark." Bill shook his head solemnly. "I'm afraid that doesn't matter anymore. Karen somehow managed to get the city to revoke that designation. She's got the mayor in her pocket, and there's nothing you can do to stop them." My heart sank as the reality of the situation sank in. Karen had outmaneuvered me, using her political connections to steamroll over my rights. I felt powerless, helpless to stop the onslaught I was about to witness. "No, this can't be happening," I said, my voice trembling. "That fountain is everything to me. I poured my heart and soul into restoring it. I can't just let them destroy it." Bill placed a hand on my shoulder, his eyes full of empathy. "I'm sorry, man. I know how much that fountain means to you, but it looks like Karen has won this round." I stared past him, watching as the bulldozers lurched to life, their steel jaws poised to devour the intricate stonework and cascading waterfall that had brought me so much joy over the years. Tears of frustration welled in my eyes, and I knew I had to act fast before it was too late. "I won't let her get away with this," I growled, pushing past Bill and marching determinedly toward the backyard. "This isn't over yet." As I stormed into the backyard, Karen turned to face me, her lips curled into a condescending smile. Well, if it isn't the fountain enthusiast himself," she sneered. "I'm so glad you could join us for the big event." "What the hell do you think you're doing, Karen?" I shouted, my voice trembling with rage. "That fountain is a registered landmark. You can't just waltz in here and have it destroyed." Karen let out a haughty laugh. "Oh, Blackhand dear. I've got the mayor and the entire city council in my pocket. They were more than happy to revoke that ridiculous landmark designation once I explained how much of an eyesore your precious fountain was." I felt my blood boiling as her words sank in. She had orchestrated this entire scheme, manipulating the system to get what she wanted, all while knowing full well how much that fountain meant to me. "You're a despicable human being, Karen," I spat. "This is my home, my property. You have no right to come in here and destroy something I've poured my heart and soul into." Karen's smile only widened. "That's where you're wrong, dear. I have every right. You see, I've filed a complaint with the city, claiming that your fountain is a hazard and a nuisance to the neighborhood. And guess what? They agreed with me." I felt my stomach twist into knots as the reality of the situation sank in. Karen had not only managed to strip the fountain of its protected status, but she had also convinced the authorities that it was a danger that needed to be removed. I was powerless to stop her. "No, you can't do this," I pleaded, my voice cracking. "Please, Karen, you have to understand how much this fountain means to me. It's not just a piece of landscaping. It's a part of my history, my legacy. You can't take that away from me." But Karen's expression remained cold and unforgiving. I'm afraid I can, and I will, she said, turning back to the construction crew. All right, let's get this show on the road, gentlemen. Time to say goodbye to that eyesore once and for all. As the bulldozers rumbled to life, I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't just stand by and watch as my beloved fountain was destroyed. This was war, and I was determined to fight back, no matter the cost. Panic gripped me as I watched the bulldozers lurch forward, their metal jaws poised to tear into the intricate stonework of my beloved fountain. I had to do something, anything, to stop this madness. Without a second thought, I darted forward, planting myself in front of the massive machines, arms outstretched in a desperate attempt to block their path. "Stop!" I shouted, my voice cracking with emotion. "You can't do this. That fountain is a registered landmark. You have no right to destroy it." The construction crew paused, their engines rumbling as they stared at me in bewilderment. Karen, however, simply rolled her eyes and stepped forward, her arms crossed defiantly. "I'm afraid you're mistaken, Mr. Fountain Enthusiast," she sneered. "The city has revoked that landmark designation. This eyesore is coming down, whether you like it or not." I felt my heart racing, the adrenaline coursing through my veins as I desperately tried to come up with a plan. There had to be something I could do, some legal loophole I could exploit to save my precious fountain. "But you can't do this," I pleaded, turning to the construction crew. "Don't you see? This is part of our shared history, our community's legacy. You can't just let Karen bulldoze it into oblivion." The foreman, a burly man with a gruff expression, seemed to waver for a moment. "Look, pal, I get that this fountain means a lot to you," he said, "but the city's made their decision. Our orders are to take it down." I could feel the panic rising in my chest, my mind racing as I tried to come up with a solution. And then, a glimmer of hope. The documentation I had carefully preserved, the proof that my fountain was a protected landmark. "Wait," I exclaimed, frantically digging through my pockets. "I have the paperwork right here. It clearly shows that this fountain is a registered landmark, protected by law. You can't destroy it." I thrust the documents into the foreman's hands, my eyes pleading with him to understand the gravity of the situation. The man studied the papers intently, his brow furrowed in concentration. Karen, however, refused to be deterred. "That's irrelevant," she snapped, snatching the documents from the foreman's grasp. "I've already got the city to revoke that designation. Your precious fountain is coming down, whether you like it or not." I felt my heart sink as the reality of the situation sank in. Karen had outmaneuvered me at every turn, using her political connections to steamroll over my rights. I was running out of options, and the clock was ticking. But just as the bulldozers began to rumble back to life, a new voice rang out from the crowd that had gathered to witness the spectacle. "Not so fast, Karen. I think you're forgetting one important detail." I whirled around to see the familiar face of my old friend, Mike, pushing his way through the crowd. A triumphant grin spread across his face as he approached Karen, his eyes narrowed with determination. "What are you talking about?" Karen snapped, her composure faltering for the first time. "I've taken care of everything. The city council, the mayor, the whole shebang. There's nothing standing in my way." Mike chuckled and pulled a thick file from his briefcase. "Oh, but that's where you're wrong, Karen. You see, I happen to have some, shall we say, interesting information about your little dealings with the city." Karen's face paled, and her eyes went wide with panic. "You wouldn't dare," she hissed, her voice trembling. "Oh, but I would," Mike retorted, his tone dripping with mischief. "You know, I've been doing a little digging, and it turns out your little backdoor dealings with the mayor and the city council aren't quite as airtight as you thought." The construction crew had fallen silent, their eyes shifting nervously between Mike and Karen, sensing the impending showdown. I, too, held my breath, my heart pounding with a glimmer of hope. "You see, Karen," Mike continued, "I happen to have some pretty damning evidence of bribery, corruption, and abuse of power. And if you don't want that little tidbit to find its way into the local news, I suggest you call off this little demolition project of yours." Karen's lips pressed into a thin, tight line as she glared at Mike, her fists clenched at her sides. For a long, tense moment, the world seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see who would blink first. Finally, Karen let out a frustrated sigh and turned to the construction crew. "Stop the demolition," she snapped. "This project is on hold indefinitely." The foreman blinked in surprise, then quickly signaled to his team to power down the machines. As the rumbling of the bulldozers faded, a hush fell over the crowd, all eyes trained on the unfolding drama. I felt a surge of relief wash over me, but I knew this wasn't over yet. Karen was seething, her eyes narrowed with barely contained fury as she turned to face Mike. "You think you've won, don't you?" she growled. "But this isn't over, not by a long shot. I'll find a way to get that eyesore of a fountain taken down, even if it's the last thing I do." Mike's grin only widened. "Bring it on, Karen. I've got your number, and I'm not afraid to use it." As the tension in the air crackled with the promise of an impending battle, I knew that this was only the beginning. Karen was a formidable opponent, and she wasn't going to give up without a fight. But with Mike in my corner, I felt a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, I could come out on top. As the dust settled and the construction crew reluctantly retreated, I felt a surge of relief wash over me. For now, my beloved fountain was safe from Karen's relentless crusade to have it destroyed. But I knew this was only a temporary reprieve. The battle was far from over. I turned to Mike, a deep sense of gratitude etched on my face. "Thank you, my friend. I don't know how I can ever repay you for what you've done today." Mike simply grinned and clapped me on the shoulder. "Don't worry about it, man. That's what friends are for, right? Besides, I couldn't just sit back and let that witch Karen steamroll all over you." I nodded, my gaze drifting back to the fountain, the cascading water and intricate stonework, a testament to the years of painstaking restoration work I had poured into it. "This fountain means everything to me," I murmured, my voice laced with emotion. "It's not just a piece of landscaping. It's a part of my history, my legacy. I can't let Karen take that away from me." Mike's expression grew serious as he followed my gaze. "I know, buddy, and I promise I'm going to do everything in my power to help you protect it. But we need to be smart about this. Karen's not going to give up without a fight." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the challenges that lay ahead. "So, what's the plan?" I asked, determination burning in my eyes. Mike's lips curled into a sly smile. "Well, first things first, we need to do a little dating of our own. There has to be a way to permanently protect that fountain, something that even Karen and her political cronies can't undo." He paused, his brow furrowing in thought. "And in the meantime, we need to keep a close eye on her. I get the feeling she's not going to take this lying down." I nodded, my mind racing with possibilities. "Okay, so we need to find a way to make this fountain untouchable, and we need to stay one step ahead of Karen. Sounds like a plan." Just then, a commotion near the front of the house caught our attention. We turned to see Karen storming out, her face contorted with rage, her cell phone pressed to her ear. I couldn't help but smirk. It seemed the tables had turned, and for once, she was the one on the defensive. "This isn't over, you hear me?" she shouted, glaring in our direction. "I'm going to find a way to get that fountain taken down, even if it's the last thing I do." Mike simply chuckled and waved her off. "Bring it on, Karen. We'll be waiting." As Karen disappeared around the corner, I felt a renewed sense of determination. With Mike by my side, I knew I had a fighting chance against this formidable foe, and I was more determined than ever to protect my beloved fountain, no matter the cost. Over the next few days, Mike and I went into full investigative mode, determined to find a way to permanently protect my beloved fountain. We scoured through every legal document, every city ordinance, and every historical record we could get our hands on. searching for any loophole or technicality that could give us the upper hand. Meanwhile, Karen remained suspiciously silent, almost too silent for my liking. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was plotting something, biding her time before launching her next attack. The waiting was agonizing, but Mike assured me that we needed to be patient, to let her make the first move. The more she thinks she can catch us off guard, the better, he said, his eyes narrowed with determination. We need to be ready for whatever she throws our way. And then, just as I was starting to let my guard down, the proverbial bomb dropped. I was in my backyard, admiring the gentle flow of the fountain's waters, when a shadow fell over me. Whirling around, I was met with the smug grin of none other than Karen herself. Well, well, if it isn't my dear neighbor, she purred, her voice dripping with false sweetness. I must say, your little fountain is looking positively lovely today. I felt my hackles rise, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. What do you want, Karen? I asked, my voice laced with suspicion. Oh, nothing much, she replied, waving a dismissive hand. I just wanted to let you know that I've been doing a little more digging of my own. And you know what I found. My heart sank as I watched her pull a thick envelope from her purse, the corners of her lips curling into a triumphant smirk. It seems that your precious little fountain is actually in violation of several city ordinances, she announced, her tone rich with glee. And you know what that means, don't you? I felt the color drain from my face as the realization dawned on me. You can't be serious, I stammered, my mind racing to come up with a counter-argument. But Karen's expression only grew more sinister. Oh, but I am. And I've already filed the necessary paperwork with the city. That fountain of yours is coming down, whether you like it or not. Before I could even respond, she turned on her heel and sauntered back toward her house, leaving me standing there, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and fury. I knew I had to act fast, to find a way to stop Karen's latest scheme before it was too late. But as I racked my brain, desperately trying to come up with a solution, a sense of dread began to creep in. Had we underestimated our formidable foe? Was there truly no way to protect my beloved fountain from her relentless crusade? The uncertainty was agonizing, and I knew that the only way to find out was to face this challenge head-on. But as I steeled myself for the battle to come, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that this might be a fight we just couldn't win. The news of Karen's latest attack hit me like a sucker punch to the gut. After all the hard work and dedication I had poured into restoring my beloved fountain, the thought of it being torn down was simply unbearable. I rushed to Mike's house, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. We had to find a way to stop Karen's relentless crusade, no matter the cost. She's filed paperwork to have the fountain taken down, citing city ordinance violations, I explained, my voice trembling with emotion. We have to do something, Mike. We can't let her win. Mike's brow furrowed with concern as he listened to my frantic explanation. All right, calm down, man, he said, placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder. Let's think this through. He sat down at his computer, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he began to research the city's ordinances and regulations. I paced nervously, my mind racing with 1,000 different scenarios, each one more dire than the last. After what felt like an eternity, Mike let out a frustrated sigh and leaned back in his chair. I'm sorry, buddy, but it looks like Karen may have us this time, he said, his voice tinged with defeat. What? I exclaimed, my heart sinking. You mean there's nothing we can do? Mike shook his head solemnly. I scoured every inch of the city code, and it seems she's found a loophole. Those ordinance violations she cited, they're legitimate, and the city is well within their rights to order the fountain's removal. I felt my knees go weak, and I sank down onto the couch, my head in my hands. This can't be happening, I mumbled, my voice barely above a whisper. I've poured my heart and soul into that fountain. I can't just let Karen take it away from me. Mike moved to sit beside me, placing a comforting hand on my back. I know, man, I know. But sometimes, even when we fight with everything we've got, the deck is just stacked against us. I looked up, my eyes glistening with unshed tears. So, what do we do now? Just give up? Mike's expression hardened with determination. Hell no. We fight this, tooth and nail. Maybe we can't stop the fountain from being torn down, but we can sure as hell make Karen pay for what she's done. I felt a glimmer of hope ignite within me. What did you have in mind? A wicked grin spread across Mike's face. Well, it just so happens that I've uncovered some very interesting information about our dear friend Karen's own shady dealings. Information that could land her in a whole lot of trouble with the authorities. I felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through my veins. I'm listening, I said, a newfound sense of purpose filling me. All right, here's the plan, Mike began, leaning in conspiratorially. We're going to use Karen's own dirty tricks against her. We're going to bring her down hard and make sure she never meddles in our lives again. As Mike laid out the details of his scheme, I felt a sense of grim satisfaction take hold. If I couldn't save my fountain, the least I could do was ensure that Karen paid dearly for her callous disregard of my beloved creation. This was war, and I was ready to go to any lengths to ensure that justice was served. The plan was bold, ambitious, and quite possibly insane. But as Mike laid out the details, I couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement coursing through my veins. If we pulled this off, not only would we save my beloved fountain, but we would also ensure that Karen paid dearly for her underhanded tactics. Are you sure this is going to work? I asked, my voice laced with uncertainty. I mean, we're talking about taking down a well-connected, powerful woman. What if she catches wind of what we're up to? Mike's eyes sparkled with mischief. That's the beauty of it, my friend. Karen is so focused on taking down your fountain that she'll never see this coming. We've got her dead to rights, and all we have to do is pull the trigger. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the challenges ahead. All right, I'm in. Let's do this. Over the next few days, Mike and I put our plan into motion, working tirelessly to gather the necessary evidence and build our case against Karen. We dumbed through financial records, city documents, and political connections, leaving no stone unturned in our quest for justice. Meanwhile, Karen remained oblivious to our machinations, confident in her ability to steamroll over me and my fountain. Little did she know that the tables were about to turn in a spectacular fashion. Finally, the day of reckoning arrived. I stood nervously in the backyard, watching as the construction crew arrived to begin the dismantling of my beloved fountain. Karen, sporting a triumphant grin, strode toward me, her arms crossed over her chest. Well, it looks like this is the end of the line for your precious little eyesore, she sneered. I must say, I'm going to enjoy watching them tear it down, piece by piece. I felt my blood boil, but I forced myself to remain calm. We'll see about that, Karen, I retorted, my voice dripping with confidence. Just then, a commotion erupted at the front of the house, and a procession of police officers and city officials came marching in, their expressions grim. Karen Wilkins? One of the officers called out, his voice booming across the yard. Karen's face paled as she turned to face him, her bravado suddenly shattered. Yes, that's me, she squeaked, her voice trembling. Ma'am, you're under arrest for bribery, corruption, and abuse of power, the officer announced, producing a pair of handcuffs. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. As the officers cuffed Karen and led her away, I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication wash over me. Mike had come through, and our plan had worked to perfection. I turned to the construction crew, who stood there dumbfounded, unsure of what to do. All right, boys, show's over, I announced, a triumphant grin spreading across my face. You can pack up your tools and head on home. The foreman blinked in surprise, then quickly signaled to his team to begin dismantling their equipment. As they retreated, I couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief, my gaze drifting back to the fountain that still stood proudly in my backyard. "Looks like you're safe, old friend," I murmured, a smile tugging at the corners of my lips. "And Karen? Well, she got exactly what she deserved." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the fountain's flowing waters, I knew that justice had been served. And in the end, that was all that really mattered.